Welcome to Flesh and Pod, a flesh and blood podcast, breaking down weekly news and notes from the tournament scene, community drama, game strategy, and more. And now, here are your hosts, Darick and Logan.
Hello, and welcome to episode one.
Wait, don't hit record.
Too late. We're recording.
All right.
Why? Why?
Nothing. I'll just put my pants back on.
No. Leave them off. Welcome to episode 171 of Flesh and Pod. Off to a hot start. I am your host.
Oh, yeah.
Logan, and with me as always is the man, the myth, the pantsless, Darick Oswald Charmer. How you doing, buddy? You look well.
I am doing well. Just kind of overall. So I have good news. First, let's start with the best news. We have found long-term placement for the girls. They are staying with a family that is not near us, but close enough that they are at least attending the same school. My wife will still, be able to see them every day. When they were transitioned over, we had been taking a bunch of notes and journaling and doing a bunch of stuff. And obviously we have, we had bought a bunch of things for the girls and things like that. And so when they were transitioning, we sent all of our notes, all of the new stuff that we had got for them for their journey and whatever with them. And then the caseworker said, technically it's up to the new people, whether or not they wanted to, maintain contact, blah, blah, blah. And I know that is in place mostly just for the safety or the protection of the girls, right? Like it's one of those things, but they've already said that they are open to it. They thanked us for the notes. In fact, there was we've already helped out by watching them once already. So we're still involved, but we at least have them their own space now. The people that have them now, their parents own a bison farm nearby, so they do also have access to a bunch of space, and things are looking up. So the combination of that, along with my wife's mom and the boys have some cousins, and one of them is older. Her name is Arabella. My mother-in-law and Arabella came over today to hang out with the boys so that my wife and I could just go out. And we didn't do anything super special, but we just kind of had a mini date day. So we went and got some amazing Thai food and stopped at a cute coffee shop and walked around. In one of the suburbs of Detroit, there's this, I don't know, it's kind of like this cute marketplace thing called the Rust Belt. And then there's a bunch of other things that are all kind of along this strip. It's near Woodward Ave. We also went to... So there's a really famous bookstore here called John King's Books. It's like a 4-story bookstore, but they are not open on Sundays, but they have a sister store that is also there that is open on Sunday. So we went and walked around the bookstore and
that's where the picture of the Christian fiction section that you sent me came from. Okay.
Yep. That's where I sent that to you. So so we just had just a wandering adult carefree afternoon, which is exactly what I needed with everything else that had been going on. So it was nice. And so I'm feeling better. My day job work is still very hectic. I don't think that's going to change with all of the, government stuff that's happening now and in the near future. But this was what I needed. This was nice. So I'm feeling good. I also... I have not yet made it to my armories because I'm still working out the exact details with Doa, but all signs are pointing to either this week or the following week. I will be attending, and I will be taking Stark as well. So he'll get to go to his first armory. Just have to finish those details. But I did at least get to play in the Star Wars pre-release this weekend, which was my first time I'd played cards, really in any real capacity since Prague. So
wow. Okay.
There's been a lot going on, but it was nice to get back to feeling a sense of normalcy.
Yeah,
exactly. And I'm happy to report I won that pre-release. So, I'm not all the way washed.
Yeah, no rust.
Yeah.
That's great, and I'm glad to hear that the foster situation is a little less chaotic, and which is best for everybody. And also just I'm good to hear that your mental's doing good. Like, that's good. I like that. You still didn't do anything in Flesh and Blood, but next week, if you go to Armory, you'll have done something in Flesh and Blood, and I won't.
Right. Which I'm hoping to do. And yes. I'm hoping to, I do not plan to report any wins. I've already decided that whenever I go to that first Armory, I'm going to bring Huntsman as my wading back in, just because I just want to do something for me when I come back. Right. So just know that is on deck.
Yeah. And, this week I did actually play in one local Armory, but it was Living Legend. Not a lot of players, just kind of one of those, here's an Armory night type of things. We have a Living Legend skirmish coming up here, so we're trying to get, a little bit more of a scene for Living Legend, but this was kind of the same group of normal grinders. I just had somebody hand me a deck and they handed me Chain. And so I played that to a 2-1, lost to Starvo because they snort crayons. And the last possible turn, what turned out to be the very last turn of the game with nothing else I could do, was against Dagon White, and Dagon just looked at his hand. He's like, "Oh Lord." And I'm like, "Well, that's cool. I'm not comfortable." And he's like, "Do the thing, Oakenold fused." And I'm like, yeah. And then he's like, then felling for 8. And I'm like, right. That fair and balanced. Fox News. That's fantastic. Fuck. So I very died. But then trying to remember how to play Chain was breaking my brain for a little bit, because it'd been a minute since I played Chain at all. And boy, howdy.
It's one of those things where the timing takes some remembering, because the whole when you soul shackle and how you extend your turn and when do you, depending on the length of the game, there is also the situations, and maybe it's not an issue in Living Legend. I don't have a ton of Chain reps there, but when you used to play it, there was also that consideration of when do you start potentially pulling back on your shackles so that you don't deck yourself, right? So there's that weird, usually somewhere between shackles 3 and 5 is when you start considering it, and a lot of it was matchup dependent and what your hand dictated, but it's not an easy thing to just pick back up. So I'm not surprised that you're saying that.
Yeah, I thought that in that same Starvo matchup, I thought that everything was kind of fine. I was in a good spot. I was able, the shackle number was just kind of at that same nice steady point where I feel like I'm drawing cards. And then Dagon dominated a smack to reality and blew up all of my soul shackles.
Yeah. He looked at his hand and laughed, and you said,
"I'm in danger."
That is what I said. Yeah. And but there was one, because sometimes you try to give yourself that challenge level impossible. And so I was my opponent was at low life, and I'm looking at my hand. I'm trying to figure out how I can get the Eclipse off without killing him. I couldn't, but I tried, but I couldn't. Right. So I was a brand new player, and I was kind of on the fly teaching them how to play Azalea while playing Chain at the same time. And he was picking it up, which is good. Just kind of here's what these things do. Ignore everything this hero does because it's pretty much irrelevant. But I'll work with you on this hero. So did that. I also finished the Lego X-Mansion this week.
Very happy to hear that.
Yeah, bask in its glory. And so that's currently taking the place of Deathsaurus, which was over here prior. This will just kind of be my rotating sweetest thing I have spot. But so yeah, that was my week. I played a bit of Talishar, trying to figure draft out a bit. It's kind of Uprising-ish in that force a thing, do the thing, win dice rolls. And that's kind of unfortunate. With, obviously the stick that stirs the drink, so to speak, is if there is a well-supported Arachne in the pod, like that is the breaking of that rule.
Right.
So that just, again, kind of depends. So that's interesting. I am as confused as ever as to what I should play in London. My deck choices haven't changed. It's just the leader in the clubhouse keeps shifting. So let's jump into that. We had 2 Battle Hardens this weekend, one in Charlotte, one in Taipei. Both were classic constructed, both with wildly different results. Regionality kind of at its apex right now. So
I was going to say, it kind of reminds me of, for players that might be newer, they don't potentially know that there was a time when anything that was from the Australian/New Zealand area, like clockwork, you could just assume that there was going to be like 2 or 3 dashes no matter what. And I haven't seen this kind of differential between top 8s since that period. Like, it used to be locked in. If it was that region, like you were going to see some dashes.
Yeah. Dash's living legend points have largely come from that area.
Yeah.
So, and she's almost LL'd. Like, it's not like they weren't succeeding with their plan.
Exactly.
But the top 8, so the Charlotte was won by Michael Fang on Enigma. Top 8 was a Dash.io. You can kind of discount that because it was Rose Smythe. And as we all know, if Rose is playing Dash, Rose is winning. So Rose was fucking beating people down with Pummel Dash last I looked, and top 8ing with that shit. So, 1 Dash.io, 1 Ira, 1 Vincent, 1 Prism, 1 Enigma, 1 Uzuri, and 2 Zen. So, representation in the room, the most represented decks were, in order, were Aurora, none in the top 8, Syndra, none in the top 8, and Prism, 1 in the top 8.
I would just like to point out that I have been on record as saying I think that Enigma had some potential, and it did end up getting a win.
Enigma has a very, unless Michael was doing something different, Enigma has a very hard time into Syndra's. So I'm interested to see what the list looks like, because if it looks just generically Enigma, then it just kind of turns into good player wins games, right? And in this case, good player won games and won tournament. What do you know? So yeah, the Auroras and the Syndras just got bodied. However, I would like to point out that in the ProQuest Plus the next day, which would be today, the day we're recording, the top 8 was 5 fucking Auroras.
5.
5.
Didn't
2
stutter.
Dash, 2 Dash.ios and a Vincent. So there's probably a bunch of Auroras that were right there and didn't close, is my guess. For the Battle Hardened in Charlotte, because the Battle Hardened in Taipei was won by Gao Zhipeng on Aurora. And the top 8 was, and follow along here, 1 Rhinar, which is definitely an Asia thing. Which is definitely an Asia thing.
Sure.
One Syndra. 6 fucking Auroras. Found him.
The good news is, Aurora is not like doing well, and she's going to get that armory help. So I think that'll help the representation, right? Like, we get that armory deck coming out.
Yeah.
And it'll fix some of those issues. So
I don't think there are any issues. I had the conversation, and there was some conversation this weekend about Aurora, Syndra, Mario, a few other things. And definitely in that conversation was, okay, so the deck is good and it's going to get Skizix Serenade. And then the blue block 3 that just like makes an embodiment and draws a card.
Mm-hmm.
So what the fuck are
honest legitimate question is whether or not that blue even makes the cut.
It does, because this is better than Heaven's Claws.
Yeah, but like, I'm still not convinced that you want to run any blues. I know that that's heresy stuff, but
that is, you might as well not have a weapon. And you might as well never run Grasp of the Arknight, except for the fact that it blocks 3.
Yeah, no, I don't think that you want to. I think you want to run, what is it, the Quill?
Vexing Quill Hand?
Yeah. It's 3 value either way. It's just one is offensive value and one is defensive
unless
value.
You play blues. And
unless you play blues, but then you're having you're planning for bad turns. I don't want to play bad turns.
You have a lot of really good turns with blues.
No, you don't.
Yes, you do.
You're not paying for anything in that deck.
Do you know how good Current Funnel can be sometimes?
No, because I don't play it. It's blue.
Jesus fucking Christ. Okay. All right. Okay. Take my word for it. It's good.
Can
you do that?
Sure.
You're lying to me. I hate when you lie to me. So this is... So the Apex Predator, I was just watching Randy Orton prepare to punt Kevin Owens, so the Apex Predator thing just kind of was on top of mind. But the Apex Predator here is Aurora, obviously.
You think so?
With added help in was already a very consistent deck with really one bad matchup. Now, that being said,
I'm just curious, what's the one bad matchup?
Prism. You just
now
pull
are
down
you
your
saying
pants.
One bad matchup as far as like things that you would expect to see, or just period? Because I think that there are more bad matchups than that. It's just that the representation will be so small that it will not be worth consideration.
So a little bit of both. I consider it a bad matchup to be something where the expectations of winning are wildly against you. And the other portion being that, yes, decks you'd expect to see.
Yeah.
So no Acilio.
Right. Well, because I stand by this. I think that I think Bravo actually has a really good matchup into Aurora, but the problem is I don't expect a lot of representation because Bravo has a lot of bad matchups for other decks I would expect to see.
And I think that you're going to see Bravo at the Pro Tour in a pretty decent representation because of that.
Yeah, because when you look at your matchups, like, yes, Bravo has a bad matchup into Enigma, despite the high number of stuff that you could have as poppers. If I'm being honest, I still think that you have a pretty bad matchup into Prism. But when you're looking at the other end of potential representation, I think that you are pretty good into Aurora. I think you're pretty good into Syndra. And I think that if you are just mindful of your blue inclusion, I think that you can have a much better matchup into new than you used to be able to. So I think that I think you're right. I think the Pro Tour, we will see some Bravos show up as a result of that.
And again, we've created, as the metagame is right back to the same sort of state it was the last Pro Tour, which was the reason that Uzuri won. Because it was take the deck that's good into X, that's good into Y, and is good enough into the rest of the field, and just kind of try to eat your way through it. So we could be at that point again. Yeah. And I know I mentioned to people in Prague that we were talking about what London would look like. I'm like, I wouldn't be surprised if Uzuri won again, because we're going to hit a cycle where it's like aggro deck go burr, then it's like slow down aggro deck with, Prism or whatever, Guardian go burr, and now it's like new is good to feast on Guardian, feast on Bravo, and then Uzuri gets to eat new alive. So, ouch. It also tells me in my mind, if that's the cycle I expect, Slippy is again unplayable. So, nope. Not if I think there's going to be any representation of new. I ain't doing that shit. That's
or
crazy.
Uzuri. Like, it's not just
Uzuri.
new.
Yeah,
It's
actually, Uzuri. Yeah, it's both.
As much as people are like, I don't want to play Slippy into new, I'm just going to be honest with you. I think playing Slippy into Uzuri is a million times scarier than playing.
It's terrifying. Because they just get to do an attack, you overblock it, and they go, cool, here's the next one.
Yeah, and if you don't, then I do the swap, and now you better have a bunch of D-reacts because you couldn't block into it to begin with. Like, yeah, I would rather play Slippy into new as opposed to Uzuri.
But both are bad.
But both are bad, yeah, sure. But I just... Ugh.
So that one's kind of... I don't think Slippy's playable. Marionette could be. I'm willing to entertain that. Syndra would have to come a full around the cycle with Prisms kind of dropping off because Syndra just has a very hard time into Prism. They have to hit 2 turns where they don't have yellows. And that's really hard to do. So probably not that. Whereas the split damage with Aurora is usually enough to keep their field clear. And then you can try to burst them down a little bit. It's still a garbage matchup. Like, it is very bad. So I don't think that, if you're thinking that there's going to be if I'm thinking there's going to be a ton of Prism, probably neither of those decks is playable. So it'll be an interesting decision unless I find something else that I love, or I just say, fuck it. I am too stupid to figure this out. I'm just going to play Kasai and get rolled. We do have a calling in Kobe next weekend. I believe it's CC. I guess I should check. But in the case that that calling Kobe is classic constructed, like, we're going to be back in Asia, right? Like, yeah, it's classic constructed. So we're still in Asia. So we could be looking at a similar tons of Aurora, tons of Syndra aggro metagame again, where we see a new win.
Yeah, I can see that.
So or
an Uzuri.
I think it's the same or similar as last time, where Uzuri just gets busted out for the Pro Tour and gains, the living legend points and goes back on mothballs for however long.
If you're trying to cosplay as an assassin, you show up for some high value targets, take them out, and then disappear to the shadows for the rest of the year. So that tracks.
Pretty much. Yeah, that makes sense. Any other comments about where we're at in our current state of classic constructed?
No, I don't think so. I think the only bit that I would maybe follow up with, which is perhaps a pretty lukewarm take, but even with seeing all of this Aurora representation popping up just before the event, I still feel like the metagame's in a really good spot. I think that number of decks, like that 6, is more of a blip and less of a real representation of what you could expect in the top 8s for the Pro Tour. Still wouldn't be shocked if we see, 2 or 3 Auroras there, but I think that we're going to see a bit more diversity because the reality is we're in a pretty good spot for playing the game right now, it feels like.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Which is sort of fascinating. And I know that a lot of people don't like these ill-defined meta games because it is hard to prepare for. But at the same time, it kind of is more exciting. You know, you can see more stuff happen and it's a little bit more interesting. So
I love it.
Kind of goes both ways.
You should feel uncertain because, like, what made me fall in love with Flesh and Blood to begin with is the importance of the 4-card hand and how everything you do, every decision you make creates that tension, right? Some level of uncertainty. And so when you can translate that to literally the metagame, because there are so many potentially viable things that you might need to consider, I would say that is the game's bread and butter. And I would also argue that whenever we have these wide or wider metagames, it's also seemingly when specialists are the most rewarded. And I also think that's a great hallmark of the game. And the Uzuri thing that you and I keep talking about is a great example, right? The person who did win with Uzuri won after spending a lot of time playing Uzuri, right? It wasn't like, oh, I just picked up this deck because I thought it would be good. And so whenever you have metas like this where specialists can thrive, and I would even argue that, you know, the win on Enigma, right? That is, like, don't get me wrong, Michael Fang can play whatever. But I would still argue that is still truly kind of what I would consider a specialist win, because Michael is very good at piloting defensive decks that can turn it on when needed, right? Whether it's Oldhim, whether it's Starvo when that meta is going, whether it's Enigma, he has a knack for understanding how to maximize his value and when to become the beatdown. And I think that deck, or at least that style of deck, is perfect for his play style. So again, not surprised that he got a win, because if we're in this situation where, you know, specialists, whether it's for a specific hero or a specific play style, are going to be rewarded, like, that makes sense. So I'm really looking forward to, you know, spectating the Pro Tour and seeing how the games and how the storyline develops as a result.
Yeah. And, you know, I'll be there participating, at least in the first day. Not so sure beyond that. We also got our banned and restricted announcement for March. To the shock of no one, there were no changes in Classic Constructed. It's probably in a very good spot. And I think they're very satisfied with the diversity of the metagame. That doesn't mean that with the Armory deck additions that Aurora just doesn't become prohibitively good and eat a ban later. It just is at current. No changes really needed. In Living Legend, though, they did restrict Electromagnetic Somersault, so there is that. Mm-hmm. So only one copy for y'all. In Blitz, they banned Traverse the Universe in Zephyr Needle. Which, okay. And then they fucking unbanned Crown of Seeds. Now, I'm not in love with unbanning Crown of Seeds. So, you know.
I'm fine with it.
Of course you are.
I just wish that they... This is my official thought with Crown of Seeds. All right. Whenever they are getting ready to ban, unsuspend it, whatever, they need to let people know ahead of time so they can go back to practicing before it's officially legal, because I never have problems. Well, I can't say I never, but I rarely have as many problems with the effect as I do with the people playing the effect. And this is not a knock against players. It's just, I know that we saw, our Discord had quite the discussion about it, and what I said in there, I want to say here. What always seems to happen is whenever you have people pick up a deck and they are playing a hero who uses Crown of Seeds, and if you have not played with that card, you don't realize how much extra time in the game you spend doing the bookkeeping around just that one card. It is one of those things where if you are just jamming games on Talishar, you do not understand what it means to arsenal your card, they do something, you say in response, you have to pitch, you have to put the card on the bottom, so that's picking stuff up and moving stuff. Then you have to remember the floating point of damage prevention, and so there's usually some sort of indicator. You have to draw a card, and then when you draw the card, you're presented with new information. So even if you had your stuff planned out, if whatever you've drawn is unexpected or presents a new line, and now you have to, potentially have a moment to reconsider what you're going to do. Again, gameplay wise, I love what the card does because it creates all these micro decisions. But whenever you have new players who are not used to that play pattern piloting it, what you have is games going to time, just full stop. It happened when the card was released. It happened the last time that it was brought back into the fold, and we're seeing it again now. It's one of those things that will get better over time, because like all things get better with reps. But right now it's an issue. And that's why I say, jokingly, I know that they can't, but it would be nice if they were like, hey, this is going to be legal in 2 weeks. Get your practice in person. Because again, what I cannot stress enough is doing it on Talishar when, one, it does it for you, but also you're usually not paying as much attention to time, is in no way, shape, or form the same as doing it when you're going through the motions. So, yeah.
All those little actions. Yeah. All those little actions that you're taking every turn add up. So you kind of want to make sure you know what you're doing with it. Luckily, it's Blitz, so a lot of times it's still very fast. But also, you have a condensed round timer, though, too. Sure.
Listen, if I would say, I don't care if it's Blitz, I don't care if it's like shuffle up and play.
Crack shuffle play, yeah. Crown of Seeds, crack shuffle play? I don't fucking think so.
Yeah. Oh, I'm just covering it for the future. Who knows what kind of shenanigans we'll have. I'm just saying, if it's possible where you could be playing with the card, get your practice in. That's what I'm saying.
All right. In Commoner, they banned Rosetta Thorn, Waning Moon, and Zephyr Needle. That kind of makes sense, honestly. I didn't even know that those cards were legal in Commoner, especially because I forgot that rare equipment could be played.
Yep.
So I didn't even know.
The only one I'm kind of sad about from those three is Waning Moon, just because they're... And listen, I'm definitely not a wizard apologist, but there's no other weapon that does anything even close to what Waning Moon does, really. And so when you ban that, you're also kind of banning an entire play style, right? And that is more so what I'm mourning. Like Zephyr Needle, there's still plenty of other daggers. Rosetta Thorn, there's still plenty of other weapons. But Waning Moon, yes, there's other wizard weapons, but there's nothing that helps you do what Waning Moon was letting you do. And so that's I feel for my fellow wizard players who are mourning that. And I say my fellow as if I am one, but I'm not.
You're not. And then the unbanned Ball Lightning.
Seems okay. I mean,
sure.
Look, Aurora hasn't been doing well. Runeblade's been significantly under-supported and under-represented throughout the history of the game. Talented stuff has typically been underpowered fine as well. So I say have at it. You know?
I don't see how 6 copies of Ball Lightning in Commoner. I don't see what the problem is. I mean, it's not like they can Art of War. It's the problem. You got anything for that? Because I don't think there's a problem.
I think there's a problem.
There's probably a problem. Yeah. We'll find out, but yeah. Any other comments on the banned and restricted announcement? I think that this one was pretty cut and dry. I expect it to be pretty cut and dry, to be honest.
Yeah. No, all said and done, I'm intrigued by some of these changes. I think that it's fun to joke and say things like Ball Lightning is going to be a problem, but I would also wager that they've probably done a decent amount of testing at this point, and maybe we're at a point in the game where it's a lot better than it sounds. I do also think that the Crown of Seeds thing is in the similar vein, where I don't think that Crown of Seeds is necessarily a problem from power level, and that once people get the reps in, it'll be a little bit better. So yeah.
And then they nerfed a little bit of the full on crayon snorting, but they probably pushed it further towards full on crayon snorting in Starvo. So instead of like, okay, we'll set up some somersault turns, I'll get my, free unmovable, and then we'll do this and do this and do this. Instead, it's just like, do I have thing? Blah. Attacku. Cool. Swing weapon. Pass. Which is just full crayons. No setting things up. No cutesy shit. Just blow them up.
That's the way it should be played.
Right. And so that's why I'm like, I'm not sure that this restriction.
Not every hero is meant to be high IQ, Logan.
Yeah, that's true. They are that very true. I left the Flesh and Blood hot take segment in because I think we both have a lot of opinions that we don't necessarily voice all the time. And so I just kind of left it there.
All right.
So fire away. What do you got?
All right. I was very disappointed when it was announced, and I was a non-believer. And I didn't like what they did to Magic. I was very unsure what they were going to do to Star Wars. I am, however, changing my tune on the collector's edition packs. So
the Carbonite
Star
ones.
Wars, these are Carbonite. Turns out, yes, they're expensive, but these are gas to open. Like, it's just a lot of fun as somebody who has a gambling problem. Like, it's just a good time. So with everybody clamoring for CNC reprint this and staple reprint that, my new hot take is give me I'll call them the cold edition boosters or something for a nod to cold foil, but give me my collector's packs for Flesh and Blood. And I don't care if it's alt art or new Marvel treatments or whatever you want to do to jazz it up to justify the price. Put your staples in there and then watch the money come in LSS. Because I was convinced that I was going to skip the product entirely, and it took like just one afternoon, and I was like, man, this is actually a lot of fun to open. And I'm, again, as somebody who's not caring about like the long term, right? I just like to open shiny stuff. I was having a really good time. And yes, I spent money, but I also enjoyed myself, right? Like, I wouldn't say like, oh, that was a waste. Who knows how I'll feel 3 years down the road, but for now, sign me up. So I want that for Flesh and Blood.
Huh. So Carbonite packs, are they reprints? Are they? So
they, there might be some reprints in, but I'm pretty sure that most of these are, it does say jump to light speed on it. So I guess maybe not. I was trying to think if I had remembered any reprints. So basically it's just started for this newest set that just launched, right? For this set. So it's the cards that are only in the newest set. However, normally in your normal packs, like the chase cards are hyperspace and hyperfoil regular cards, and then the leaders they call theirs showcases, right? There is a much higher rate of all of those in here, but also there are another type of rarity in these called prestige, and you can get them in non-foil, foil, and serialized. And the prestige cards look outstanding. They would be what I would consider this game's version of a Marvel, right?
Sure.
But it's essentially just like, it's a pack where like, yes, it's more expensive, but everything is juiced, right? So like, even if you get like a common or whatever, it's guaranteed to be like at least a hyperspace sort of thing, which would normally be, one of the things you were trying to chase in the other.
I mean, I don't love or hate that, I guess. I just don't.
I was just saying, like, it doesn't have to be wed to a set. Obviously, that's the way that this one is doing it. I think that's the way Magic does it. I'm so out of the loop.
It is the way Magic does it.
They release like, I don't know, 100 products a year or whatever. So I don't fully follow every last one. But again, I was just thinking about all of the discourse, and we keep saying we're never going to get like cheap CNCs, but if we're saying, okay, but we still want them in circulation, then why not give us some sort of collector's pack with a bunch of extra staples? The staples could be in the expansion slot of the, collector's boosters or whatever. I don't care how you do it, but you at least get more in circulation. So people potentially, are satisfied. You're not watering it down overly because there's at least a heftier price tag, but also, I, as a gambling addict, get to open shiny things and it just make my crow brain happy. So
yeah, in Magic, the collector's boosters, at least that I remember them, all the cards are foil. So they're all Pringles, and you could open, or not, maybe not all, but a lot of them are. And then you could also, that's how you open your extended arts. We're in those, we're in collector's boosters.
So the way these ones work. So one of the things I will give FFG some credit for is that, with the exception of showcase leaders, and those are double-sided and they're almost always individually cased anyway, so you wouldn't have to worry about pringling. Every other card in the game will always have non-foil versions. And they kept that going even with the Carbonite things, right? So normally, for the 3 sets prior to this, you would have a card and then you would have a hyperspace version, which is like your extended art. And that came in hyperspace, just non-foil. Right. And then they call it hyperfoil when it's in foil. And so what they did with this is the prestige cards are not just extended art, but they're also alternate art. And for some of the big capital ships, they actually give you an old nod to the old Star Wars Decipher. So if you remember, like, the Executor in that game was sideways because it was so big. So Executor and Annihilator are in this as prestige cards, and those ones for their alternate art are sideways, right? So just like a cool historical nod. But the prestige ones, again, alternate art, extended art, but they also have non-foil versions, right? So you have non-foil, foil, and then the serialized. So if you are somebody who is worried about pringling, or you're just not somebody who cares about foils, you still have a path. And so I do like that FFG committed to that, where there's always a non-foil version of everything, with the exception of your hero, which is always going to be in a hard case for you to flip over or whatever anyway.
Sure. I have vacillated on which hot take I wanted to bring to the forefront today, because, I mean, there are a lot of different things that I happen to think are possibilities in Flesh and Blood. Right now, I'm going to posit something that might sound weird, but hear me out. I think that there is too much classic constructed and still not enough.
Okay.
Now, I think that we are in a spot with the game where regionality has definitely taken a hold, and there are some places that are blitz places. There are some places that are CC places, you know? And with the, what's the best way to put this? With the forced perspective of, like, pro quests and skirmishes where they dictate your formats, I think that sometimes you'd be a little bit better off leaving those other formats open. Like, if you wanted to have a blitz pro quest, you could. If you wanted to have a LL Pro Quest, you could. And that should be up to stores to choose. But the other side of the coin is, I think that there are too many classic constructed callings. I think there's a ton of room to let these other formats breathe a bit and make them feel like they're part of the competitive framework of the game and are curated as such. And yeah, they've done LL callings, they've done blitz callings, but there just isn't many of them. Where we have yet to have a team constructed calling. We're actually having the first team constructed battle hardened even is happening at the end of this month. So that's kind of a long time coming. And I've always been a huge proponent of team stuff. I wish the restrictions on the team event were a little bit deeper, that it was unified constructed, which means your team gets 3 copies of cards.
Oh, yeah.
Except for equipment where you get 1. Right. So you have 3 CNCs to split between you. You have 3 Sync Belows to split between you. You have 3 shelters to split between you. Go on. And then you have to play different heroes. Now, the different heroes is the one restriction they did put on it. So I'm good with that one, but I think that unified would be a little bit more interesting. But I kind of get why in the toe dipping of this, they wouldn't want to do that because it can be confusing. But I also firmly believe that we can do some different types of callings at a more regular rate to kind of give these formats room to breathe. And ultimately, I feel that way because I think that Blitz and Living Legend should be a part of Worlds. And I've said that 1,000 times, I feel like, and has not changed. These are competitive formats and they should have a place at Worlds. You should, and that also would reduce your CC time. You can leave the top 8 as CC, fine. But give me day 1 is CC and Blitz, or CC and Draft. Day 2 is Blitz and LL. Or even do Living Legend Draft and then Blitz CC with a CC top 8. I don't care. I just
Championship match, the finals has to be
it's chess boxing.
Best of 3 between CC, Blitz, and Living Legend.
See, I'm in. 100% in. Like all 3 formats in the finals, best of 3. Sure. You have to win 2 out of the 3 formats.
Yep.
I'm in. Would do. 10 of 10. So, and then also modify the play draw so that the modified play draw rules in effect for game 1. The loser of game 1 gets to pick in game 2. And then if there's a game 3, it would revert back to the first player.
Well,
but,
I mean, it would just be whatever format's left at that point. So,
well, no, but like player draw.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, obviously you would have the person. Well, that was the other thing is like the way I'd set it up is I would have the person that has the higher seed either gets to pick the format or play draw in the first match. You don't get both. You get one or the other. And second match, same story. And then obviously third match is going to be higher seed is play draw. Right. So I think I think you could do a lot of fun things with that and make it kind of cool. I understand that is not particularly popular with the competitive set, but I feel like specifically for Worlds, a lot of people would be behind it. So, or even if you did it as your Worlds, as like your World Cup event, where it's teams and you have LL and LLC, a classic constructed seat and a blitz seat, also fine. But I think that those formats need more time in the sun, more time for people to be involved with them. And please not LL Blitz. Those games will be 2 turns long. Like, no. But yeah, I think that's my hot take for this week. I have another piping hot one for the next time we do this, but
you should probably see a doctor about that.
Yeah, every time I see a doctor, they chastise me about my drinking habit.
You have a drinking habit?
Do you have a gambling habit?
No.
Then I don't have a drinking habit.
I have a gambling lifestyle.
And I have a drinking lifestyle. But I mean, I went out and played 18 holes of golf today. No ill effects. Yet. Tomorrow morning, I will feel it. Right now, I'm okay. But the swing's actually coming along quicker this year. I'm not feeling like I'm mechanically fucked like I do most years in the spring. I feel like I can start ratcheting up the speed a bit. I'm fairway finding, which is good. And yeah, so maybe I'll be happier this year with my golf game, which is probably not true because I'm never happy when it comes to.
So glad that you added the with your golf game, because I was about to say I have bad news for you. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Let's do some listener questions. How about that?
Yeah, we should do that.
We should do that. First one is from One Hit Wookie. How do you keep track of your collections? What cards you want? What cards you have to trade, etc.? I fucking don't.
I was about to say that's the easy answer. I don't.
I used to.
It's a number of times I've said, oh man, I really thought I had 3 copies of that. It's too damn high.
Yeah. So my problem is I know what cards I have, and I typically binder every set, and then put the cards in. But then I start building decks, and then they get pulled out, and then I swap cards in and out, which create these giant piles of cards on my desk, and those need to all be sorted. I find some of the most random shit in these piles of cards too. Like the top of this is 3 Sigils of Solace, a Cosmic Awakening, 3 Oasis Resputs, a bunch of CYB. So this must have been like an Enigma deck at one point. I don't know. That doesn't seem like me. And this pile is a foil Barbed Undertow, a foil Tar Pit Trap, a foil Silverwind Shuriken, a Head Leads the Tail. So these are this is just Outsiders cards. Nope. There's a Long Whisker Loyalty, a Dowson Runeblood, a Tenacity, a Pink Strip Sink Below. Yeah, I don't fucking know.
If my DSLR wasn't mounted, I would spin it around at the table that's just literally behind my computer right now. That is just stacks of cards. It looks like I'm playing a city builder board game, but it's just stacks of cards.
If you're looking for a good way to do it, the one that I've had the success with is every set gets a binder. You put the cards in numerical order in the binder in play sets, and you go on your merry way. For physical storage. For a digital solution, Findle's collection or Findle, whatever it's called.
Yeah.
Is really good. If you have the time and patience to do it. I don't. So I'm very bad at it. One of these days when I'm just going to bribe, there's no way I wouldn't do that to her. But if I didn't live in Iowa, which is just hell on wheels, I would bribe Elaine to come sort my cards. Because she loves that shit. And no, I do not. So
we should go visit her and her family in New Orleans next year for Mardi Gras.
They don't live in New Orleans.
Well, they live in Louisiana, though, right?
They live in Baton Rouge.
Right. So we'll go visit them, and then we'll go to New Orleans for Mardi Gras. And instead of throwing traditional bead necklaces, we will put strings through a bunch of cracked baubles and throw those at people.
I don't think that those would throw as well as beads.
I thought you were a Gambit fan. I am. I believed in you.
But that's a string of cards.
Do you think he would complain?
He also wouldn't complain throwing beads. Anal or otherwise.
But we don't have cracked baubles as beads yet. And I wanted it to be flesh and blood themed.
Well, right. So maybe we can get that. We can get beads that are cracked baubles made by somebody. And make sure that it says directly on the package, not for ass play.
Why? Keep those paramedics entertained, my man.
That's true. We need to keep them liquored up and entertained. That's the best way to have paramedics.
Mm-hmm.
Next question is from Goat Warrior Cultist. No notes. Do you think LSS will ever produce a S tier warrior? And what would it have to look like to be S tier?
Easy answer. It would have to look like a goat that belonged to a cult, and then it would be an S tier warrior. Isn't that right, Goat Warrior Cultist?
That would help.
Goat Warrior Cultist sounds legitimately like it could be a talented warrior in a future set. I just want to put that out there.
It's true. I think for warrior, to be good, they would have to print better weapon interaction cards than they're comfortable with doing. Now, they've pushed that envelope a bit, but they made it so that it wouldn't be like the Ranger glow up that happened in Outsiders. So if you think of it like, what if Goonbait just said weapon, right? And that your Decimator Great Axe could smash in for, 8 and have the first card that was blocked with it. And also, to get the card draw effect, that'd be pretty fucking good. But instead it just says dagger. And there are quite a few other reacts in the set that just say dagger. So more stuff that is non-weapon type specific in Warrior would probably be helpful. And then also more Warrior attacks that like attack actions that have interactions with your weapons. I think that part also would be necessary because...
Yeah. So instead of like a Kiss of Death that counts as a dagger, we could also get like a Claymore Kick that counts as a sword attack. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah, right. Perfect. Because, that would be another wrestling reference, if nothing else.
Exactly. It writes itself. Like it's literally right there.
If I was going to just like design an S tier Warrior out the box, I'm going to lump this in with another question from One Hit Wookie where he asked we have a heavy on a card now. What do you think a light weapon, as in weight before Charmer references Star Wars, would do? Maybe a shield or weapon in the same arm. To me, a light weapon would kind of follow the D&D rules for multi-attack, where if you have 2 light weapons, you wouldn't need go again to attack with the other weapon. You would just basically be paying 1 cost to attack with both. And so you'd only ever need 1 instance of go again to keep the chain going. But you'd still have 2 weapon hits that they had to deal with. So 2 hits on an active chain link. So it wouldn't create 2 chain links. It would just be 1 active chain link, but 2 separate hits that need blocked. I think that having a Warrior built around that property would probably do it.
Yeah.
Oh, Charmer's in the gears.
I was thinking that instead, because there's a lot of things that already exist in Warrior about letting your weapons attack 1 more extra time. I was thinking that a light weapon would be something almost like Voltaire, but like inherent on the keyword, where you just get 2 activations, and that's like what the light keyword does. Like you can use it twice already.
So like Bankbreaker would be a light wrench.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that can work too. But I think that's the only way you get an S tier Warrior, is to have something that allows you to create separate instances so that you have multiple bites of the apple of on hits in 1 attack. And then also relevant on hits would be great that aren't just in Dory. Because Dorinthia always has the threat of a Steel Blade Supremacy to end somebody, whereas the on hits for like a Kasai are very long game.
Honestly, one of the other things that I think would be a really cool space for Warrior to kind of dip into as you talk about relevant on hits, given that they're supposed to kind of be like weapons and armor masters, like we all know that Warrior has a plethora of really good equipment to choose from already, etc. I think that it would be fair for that class to kind of join Guardian as another one that gives you an emphasis on breaking things. Like, it would make sense to me that a warrior would have a good way to break equipment one way or the other.
Yeah, I could see that too. I think that also works.
Because I was trying to think, like, what, you're not wrong, but I was like, what do I want as relevant on hits that are not immediately like leeching on other classes? And while Guardian has the most ways kind of inherently to break equipment, it's not just limited to them. We do have things in some of the talents as well. And even some of like the rupture mechanics where you can like melt stuff down and whatever. So it's not like a horribly immersion breaking thing if we give that to warrior, but also just given that they are so, weapon and equipment centric, that also would make sense to me as potentially being a thing.
Yeah, I can see that too. Next question is from Sephiroth. Over under $3,749 for the Prism statue being sold. So there is another one of the 100 Prism statues made by Weta that will be sold and in London at the Pro Tour. It comes with a VIP dinner or some shit with James White. For the person that buys it. And these statues are gorgeous. There's only, I hate Illusionist, but they're very pretty. And there's only 100 of them. So far, I believe there's only been one given away to Lucas Oswald for winning the first Living Legend event, I guess. I don't know if there's a price listed anywhere yet, but my gut says over. Charmer, do you have a gut on this one?
I was trying to do some quick math here. I'm going to go with over. I was looking up, so the thing that you were talking about, that event that Lucas won, it was at Barcelona. It was in Barcelona. I was at.
Mm-hmm.
So what I was trying to do was go look at the price. So entry fee for that event was €50, but at a player cap of 384 at the time. And so I was like, okay, well, at that price and that many players, granted, like that's a chance to win or whatever, but like when I was doing the math, I'm going to go with over. I'm going to go with 4,000 to 5,000 euros would be my guess.
Yes, I'm looking at the old information. So 100 of them being made. Each one ships with a graded Marvel Prism. So you also get that. So yeah, I'm not sure. Not seeing an actual price anywhere, but their miniatures go for a fuck ton. So just looking at their they're all sold out. You can't fucking tell anything on here.
Yeah.
Collaborations, maybe. You can buy signs. Yeah, like even the small things are really expensive. So, yeah, Weta Workshop is really, really good quality. And with all the things that are kind of coming with this statue, I would assume over $37.49 USD. But I'd probably be in the same ballpark of 4K euro.
Well, the 1/4 size Witcher statue is about $1,000 US.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like secondhand market. It was sold out on the website, but
Right. I don't remember what Lucas sold that first one for, but I know it was not a small sum of money. So, yeah.
You know what? I take it back. I'm going to go with under.
You're going to take the under?
I'm going to take the under.
That makes sense to me. We'll see what it sells for, and then we'll see who's right. We're going to do one more question from the vault. I had this one on here for last week, but we'll just go ahead and do it this week. This one was from Sleeper Jackal eons ago. Back in the original Jackal face run, not in the heel run that we have the Sleeper Jackal in now. One of the big selling points I tell people about Fab is that LSS actually listens to the player base actively and engages with concerns. Do you feel that they have gotten better or worse in that department as of late? So this question's always been relevant, right? We used to joke on this show a lot and say, LSS, if you're listening. And then we found out that LSS was listening. So the joke kind of didn't work anymore. But I feel like they haven't gotten worse. I'm not sure how much better they've gotten, but there also isn't an absurdly, huge room for improvement type of space either. They're very good at what they do already. So I was reading earlier today, there was this weekend in Charlotte was also Magic's regional championship. I don't actually understand what these are. From my understanding, they're like callings that you have to win an invite to. At any rate,
they're like a road to regionals.
Yeah, kinda.
What I mean by that is it's like you had to win a road to Nats, but it's not the Magic Nationals, so they just call them regionals. But it's kind of like that.
Sure. Regardless, and was reading about a lot of judging issues because forever ago, it feels like forever ago. I actually don't know how long it was ago. WotC decided that they just didn't need certified judges anymore. And they got rid of the judge requirements and a lot of other things. And so they don't support a judge ecosystem anymore. And I had one of my close friends who engages with Magic a lot. He was like, so what does LSS do about judges? I'm like, they're in-house. Like, they're not employees of the company, but they do the entire judge program in-house. So everything is tracked in one ecosystem that is LSS run. The head judge of large events is Joshua Scott. In some cases, he's there doing the thing. That's the guy that writes the rules. Like, they're very much so hands-on with judging, and they have some very stringent requirements on what's required to be a judge in Flesh and Blood. And my buddy was like, that is definitely a very refreshing thing. And I was reading some of the horror stories from Charlotte today, and I was like, man, I'm very glad that we have the judge community we have in Flesh and Blood. And part of that, I think, is because when there has been negative judge feedback, LSS has listened. When there has been feedback on how events were run, LSS has listened, historically speaking, but they just haven't made that many missteps lately, or even to the point that Clark, one of our good friends, mentioned, I believe, on either Twitter or BlueSky, that they'd like to be able to see on, the standings pages for events where you can look at the standings each round, that next to the player's name, there'd be a column for hero. And immediately got an answer from Ethan saying, hey, this is in the works. Just please be patient. Perfect. So to me, that's an example of them listening. They know.
I want to jump on this because I also want to clarify something, because I do think that sometimes folks misunderstand what they're really asking for. So to answer this question, does LSS actively listen to the player base? Yes, full stop. Because listening versus doing what they ask are not always one and the same. And they are not required to do what we ask, but they definitely listen.
But have they gotten better or worse? In my mind, they haven't gotten worse.
Because they
it's hard to get better
because they were already actively listening.
Yeah, it's hard to get better.
Right.
So,
but that my point that I just really want to stress is they can listen to us and then also just not do the exact thing that we're all asking for, because it turns out there are, thousands of us all asking for different things. So they definitely listen. So that one's easy. Full stop. Are they better at actively engaging with concerns? I actually think they've fallen off here, and here's why. Brian is not as active on social media anymore, and I miss him not reading codexes. So I think that part's a little. I wish he was actively engaging. Sometimes when I see things that are directed at Brian, I wish he was engaging with the community with his fists. But again, I'm just one person. You don't have to listen to my feedback, LSS.
Hey, Brian, if you're listening to this, we need you to come back on the show now, because apparently you need to educate Charmer with your fists.
Oh, I would love for him to educate me with his fists.
Okay, that sounded If you call Brian daddy on this show, I fucking swear to God.
Why do you think I was being silent? I was hard biting my tongue. Hard. Dentist can be like, what's this tooth print on your tongue? Well, you see.
No. I wanted to call a man daddy, and I was trying to resist. But I think that's all I got this week. I think that's our show.
Yeah.
Probably should thank patrons, though.
Yeah, you should do that.
We keep getting more people into the Charger's Chamber of Charcoal. I don't know why I ever agreed to this. I mean, honestly, the experiment went great for the first one.
Hey, listen. When they give us the collector's boosters, they should call them charming boosters.
Yeah, call them charming boosters, because that goes over well.
Yep.
Let's first thank our associate producers. We have Aladoris, Andy, Cinderella, Jacob, the Quiet Goat, and the Salty Sea Cat, and Zaris. For executive producers on up, we have Blaze Storm, valued member of the Patreon, Diana Lance Good Thrust, Larry, Micaiah, Poxanus, Vintox18, Stoop Kid, Philip, and now the Chamber, which we have Brandon. He's getting there. He's on path. Michael, next up. Soon as as of today, he has crossed the threshold. And step on up.
Just out of
you
curiosity,
let us know.
Is it just listed as Michael?
No, I know who it is.
Oh, okay. Because I was just thinking, there's an awful lot of pretty famous Michaels in the community, and it would be really funny if it was the shadow reveal.
No, this one's the Jackal. We know this one.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Oren has entered the fray, and so has Polish guy Rich.
What?
Yep. Here we go.
Okay,
here we go.
Rich is locked in.
Rich is locked in. Well, we won't be hurting for guests anytime soon. Let's put it that way. So thank you, Matt, for paving the road for others to say, yeah, I can handle that, and diving in to become one of the faithful Chargers Chamber of Charcoal participants. So thank you very much. I'll have to do something for them. I'll have to figure something out. I also need to figure something out for Philip. He has been a patron of this show at the same level since August of 2022. That's coming up on 3 years. And he is our oldest continuous patron. One step, Andy, very close as well, but I got to figure something to do for Philip, because that's quality right there. That is dedication, and I need to figure out something special for that guy. But if you need to contact the show, if you want to become a member of the Patreon, I should mention that first. You go to patreon.com/fleshandpod. Link is in the show notes. There are some number of, there are 6, I think.
Like my knights, there are many tiers.
There are many tiers. It's actually 6. Okay. Any paid tier will get you into FAP After Darks. The next one will come, pun intended, I guess. Probably after I get back from Arizona. And that will also hopefully be our playmat reveal as well for patrons. So if you want to see the playmat before it goes out the door, you'd be showing up to that After Dark session, and we'll make sure we give you plenty of lead time on that. If you need to contact me, it's just search BlueSky for Flesh and Pod, or better yet, join the Discord. Links in the show notes. There's always conversation going on, like kind of literally always. Sadly, right now, most of it is in the kicker guards corner because we live in a hellscape. But there's plenty of other things in the general nonsense, and the food channels, and the pets channels, and the pickle channel. And Charmer has posted something in the general channel just to fucking prove a point.
It wasn't me.
That point. Oh, it wasn't. Well, what do you know?
It wasn't me this time. It was
the Goat Warrior Cultist.
Warrior Cultist.
Yep.
I was just going to say, other than BlueSky and our Discord, the other place where folks can look for us is the bounty board.
It is the bounty board. That's all
I was going to say.
All right. You can also send us an email at fleshandpod@gmail.com. All these links are in the show notes. Charmer, where can they find you?
I just told you. BlueSky,
the bounty board?
Discord, bounty board.
Do I need to actually put a bounty board channel in the Discord now?
Please don't. And I say this, I say yes, because I will post some out of pocket shit that will end up putting me on an FBI list. If you give me a bounty board, I will supply you with names. So let's just not.
Okay, it's been created. You're gonna do it, aren't you?
Yes.
I probably should delete this channel. Well, you know what? I'm going to leave it up here for just at least enough time for Charmer to get arrested. All right. Well, it's coming in hot. If you want to see what's on the bounty board, you have to join the Discord. Okay, that's enough. That's our show for this week. Thank you very much for listening. I'll be on location next week for episode 172, as I will be in sunny Phoenix, Arizona. Oh, there's new names on the bounty board already. Yep. All right. We're still going. I'm hoping that no one actually knows who these people are. But
they will.
They're about to. So yeah, that's our show for this week. like I said, back next week for 172. Trying to make it to 200 with no misses is going to be rough. I need to, Jesus fucking Christ. Okay. God damn it. Yeah. So join us next week for episode 172. Like I said, going to try to make it to 200 without any misses, which is, I don't know why we do this to ourselves, but if we do make it to 200 no misses, I just need assurances from LSS that James White will come on the show. But we'll find out. I also need to find out how I'm going to do this from London.
All right. Well, I know one way that we can have him on the show. And it will only require you in London to buy a Prism statue.
That's a lot to put out there.
You know what? You want to know what's even funnier? I know when I made that joke that it's less the money and more that you would have to buy a Prism statue. That's the barrier.
Yep. You're 100% correct. That is exactly right. I would have to pay actual money for a statue of a fucking cop. I don't even know what I'd do with it. I know what I'd do with it. That should be going straight to charity. Like, straight to charity. But yeah, so join us next week for episode 172. I've said it like 100 times now. We're in a Midwest goodbye of an episode at this point. So this is the real goodbye. So we'll talk to you next week. Bye.